I'm joined now by former CIA Director and CENTCOM Commander General David Petraeus. General Petraeus, thank you for joining us this morning. Let me start with that look back. What do you think? Do you think there will be another Putin-Zelensky meeting, and is there any reason to think it would be more successful than that one?
There's not that much right now that would lead us to believe that, I don't think. In fact, out of the last 2 weeks, really, Jonathan, I think what should be clear to all, and I think it is even clear to President Trump, is that despite all of his efforts, again, which we applaud, to end a war, to stop the killing, Vladimir Putin clearly has no intention of doing that unless he's given additional territory, which is heavily fortified, and Russian forces would have to fight for years at the pace that they're going. He wants to displace President Zelensky, replace him with a pro-Russian figure, and frankly to demilitarize Ukraine, none of which can be acceptable to Ukraine nor to the European countries and the United States. In fact, by the way, President Zelensky, under the Ukrainian constitution, doesn't even have the authority to declare that certain territory would be controlled by the Russians. That would have to go to a national referendum. So again, I think it should be clear. The obstacle to peace at this point in time is President Putin, and what we need to do is change those dynamics by helping Ukraine far more than we have so far, lifting restrictions on them, seizing the $300 billion of frozen reserve in European countries of Russian money, giving it to Ukraine, more sanctions on Russia, even including the Gazprom bank, and curtailing the export of oil further than we have already.
Let me get to something else that President Trump said this week. This is a post on social media. He wrote, in part, "It is very hard, if not impossible, to win a war without attacking an invader's country. It's like a great team in sports that has a fantastic defense but is not allowed to play offense. There is no chance of winning. It is like that with Ukraine and Russia." He went on to say that it was Biden that wouldn't let Zelensky wouldn't let Ukraine attack into Russia. First of all, what's your take on what the president was intending to say there?
It's a very valid observation. It's spot on. And interestingly, as we learned in a story overnight, it's contrary to the Pentagon policy. This is another case where it appears that the Pentagon is carrying out policies that conflict with President Trump's inclination. Now, I can understand why they would limit the use of certain long-range systems against Russia when they think that Russia might still be willing to make a deal. But that should be very clear not to be the case at this moment, and I hope that there will be a review of that policy. Indeed, that was exactly what the Biden administration did in the past. They were overly sensitive, endlessly, about how Russia might react to something that they provide to Ukraine, and they were restricting the use of the Army tactical missile system and others. And so I hope that that will get a review in the White House and therefore a change in the Pentagon.
Yeah, this is a Wall Street Journal report overnight you're referring to, saying that the Pentagon has been blocking Ukraine's use of those long-range missiles inside Russian territory. Obviously, the Ukrainian military has been using drone attacks, which are far less lethal. But let me get your sense of the human cost of this war, because I know this is something you've spoken about, and I find astounding. Upwards of 20,000. Just on the Russian side, getting killed every month. In the matter of just a few months, a greater death toll than the entire U.S. death toll in the Vietnam War. I mean, it's kind of hard to imagine.
It's staggering, Jonathan. Again, as someone who had 5 combat commands as a general officer and wrote letters of condolence to America's mothers and fathers almost every single night of those commands, I can't fathom, I can't process, if you will, understand the magnitude of the losses on the Russian side. It's now estimated that over 1,060,000 Russians have been killed or wounded in this war. And of those, well over 500,000 have been so seriously wounded or killed that they couldn't even return to the front lines. This has to have, over time, a very, very substantial impact on the ability of Russia just to find a civilian workforce as well. In fact, it's reported that they are actually looking in Africa for women who can actually replace some of the men in Russia in various industries.
And of course, we've seen they've also tapped North Korean military soldiers
Yes.
fighting on the ground in Ukraine. Quite extraordinary. Before you go, I want to get your reaction to another development on Friday. The firing of the Defense Intelligence Agency Chief, Lieutenant General Jeffrey Cruz, after he oversaw the initial assessment on the Iran nuclear strike. What do you make of the president or the administration firing the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency? Apparently because they didn't like an intelligence assessment.
Yeah, I don't know the details of this particular case, Jonathan. As you mentioned, it just took place at the end of this week. There's a maxim in the intelligence community always about speaking truth to power. I think that's what this administration, any administration, should always ask of its intelligence analysts and indeed its senior intelligence leaders.
And very quickly, we'd also just shown on the screen, there are 16 general officers that have been either fired or reassigned since Trump became president. And obviously, there's 7 of them, which we talked about earlier, are women. What do you make of this? It seems like it's been called a purge in the ranks. Is this a concern?
I think it has to be a concern. Obviously, it's unprecedented. There's never been anything like this. There have been cases in the past where individuals who've gotten crosswise with the president or with the Secretary of Defense, certainly, usually on a policy issue in which they should not have spoken out and indeed were replaced. But the numbers here obviously are much more significant than that.
All right, General David Petraeus, thank you very much. Always good to talk to you. Appreciate your time.